I got a job in Atlanta, and that was after a brief job in Chicago. And I kind of accidentally became an entrepreneur. It's one of those things where I met a couple guys who were smart. We're at the lunch one day. Honestly, we were just talking about our job and all the ways we can make it better. And that turned into, why don't we just start a business to solve that? And surely if we can solve it for this company, we can solve it for other companies. So this was 1999. So this was kind of the dot-com era. So everyone was starting a business. So I think in some ways we kind of got swept up in the, what can't be that hard.
All right, welcome to Made to Matter. I'm your host, Adam Landrum, and Made to Matter is all about helping entrepreneurs build what matters, both in life and in business. And I'm excited to have Heath Wilson with me here today. You're going to enjoy this story, both from a entrepreneurial standpoint and also from just a personal standpoint. So we're going to cover a little bit, and I'm just going to get into Heath's background. Heath started and had a successful exit with his with one company, and then has founded or co-founded and started a second, and we're going to get into that too. So Heath, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Adam, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, you bet. All right, so why don't you give us a little context with first, just start where you're from, where do you live, and a little background from there.
Yeah, originally from a small-ish town in Tennessee, East Tennessee, called Johnson City. Went to University of Tennessee when I got to college age. Did a brief stint in Chicago, and then moved to Atlanta for most of my adult life. Although while in Atlanta, did a 2-year stint in London, and now actually reside in Knoxville, Tennessee, which was one of those COVID moves post my first business.
Sort of like London.
Here in Knoxville.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they got towers. They both have towers.
So close. Same accent.
All right, and how is Tennessee going to be in football? We're in football season as we're recording this. So how are they going to look this year?
Oh, Adam, look, I was in school in the 90s when we call it the decade of dominance for the Vols. It has been 2 decades of whatever the opposite of dominance is, failure. So. It's been good to see us be competitive. I'm at this point. My expectations are low, so I'm hoping we outkick those expectations.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. I can relate. Clemson is on the downside. I'm a Clemson fan, and our opening against LSU was less than stellar, which it was not surprising to this realistic.
It was a tough game.
Realistic Clemson fan, yeah. So okay, so tell me, all right, so what'd you do after school? How did you get to London? I mean, there must be a story there.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I got a job in Atlanta, and that was after a brief job in Chicago, and I kind of accidentally became an entrepreneur. It's one of those things where I met a couple guys who were smart. We're at the lunch one day. Honestly, we were just talking about our job and all the ways we can make it better. It turned into, why don't we just start a business to solve that? And surely if we can solve it for this company, we can solve it for other companies. So this was 1999. So this was kind of the dot-com era. So everyone was starting a business. So I think in some ways we kind of got swept up in the, what can't be that hard, idea. And we did it. And I think it's funny looking back, like we had a mentor at the time say, guys, just go start it. If it fails, you can get a job, right? You're eminently employable. And at the time, when you're 20, I think I was 26 at the time, I didn't have a car payment or, a wife or a mortgage or any of the things that can potentially hold you back from making big risks in your life. So I just kind of went for it. And we stumbled upon something. And that led to, me really finding a spark and a desire to be an entrepreneur and to build things and to create things and to lead people. And that led me to London. Our business grew pretty dramatically over a 17-year period. And part of that was expanding internationally. So that was definitely a fun experience.
Yeah. So this wasn't necessarily a plan or dream of yours, but you sort of accidentally got a taste of it. And you're like, I like this.
I loved it. I didn't have the classic lemonade stand story that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have. My dad was back in the days, we used to call it a stockbroker, now financial advisor. But I do recall walking into his office as a young child and seeing him flipping through the phone book, making cold calls to build his business. So in some ways, maybe like subliminally or subconsciously, like just seeing him build something from scratch rubbed off on me. But no, I didn't go to school thinking, hey, I'm going to go start my own thing. I thought I'd just get a job and, kind of follow what culture said.
Yeah. So you said that it was 99, is that right?
We started in 2000, but the idea started percolating in 99. Yeah.
Well, 2000 was a tough time to start a business. I know, because I started mine in 2001,
Yeah.
and it was right around when 9/11 happened. It was, so this is after. So some people may not have this perspective, but it was the dot bomb, which it was
Yeah.
shorter than the Great Recession, but it was probably a little bit more intense. The months that it happened. So for you, not really having maybe the initial strong desire to be an entrepreneur and to go do that. I mean, that took a lot of courage.
Gosh, it's funny when you mentioned it, I had forgotten completely about the dot-com crash. And here's what's crazy about that. So, May of 2000s when the NASDAQ crashed, we started in June, literally 4 weeks after the market crashed. And I remember at the time thinking, wow, we have timed this poorly. But honestly, it was the best time to start because it forced us to be very focused and very frugal. And we actually had a competitor doing something similar who had raised a bunch of venture capital money, and they had a bunch of money to spend. And honestly, they blew it because they just didn't know what to do with it. Whereas we were operating on such a shoestring budget that we kind of focused on the one or two things that mattered. So I wouldn't trade it. I mean, yes, it would have felt more comfortable to have raised money 6-7 weeks earlier. But honestly, we probably wouldn't be talking today. We probably would have made some bad mistakes. So, and look, our business was in the financial services industry. So September 11th was real, even beyond the tragedy that it was. I mean, we had customers in those buildings. And I remember sitting in a restaurant thinking, we may have to close down the business. Like this is a once in a lifetime event that may completely upend the financial industry. And we're just a small potato in what we're trying to build. And honestly, we were just starting to build it. So that was a pretty crazy, tumultuous period. But I completely forgot about it until you just mentioned it.
Yeah, I can't stress it enough again for our listeners. If you weren't around this time and if you aren't an entrepreneur yet or you haven't launched your thing, Heath, what you did started it after the dot bomb, and then really about a year, just barely over a year later, 9/11 happens. I mean, everything was a standstill for weeks and maybe even months after 9/11. Like people did not know what to do. And so like again, you said it well, like a horrible tragedy, of course, but what a super challenging time to have a young company. I mean, did you feel like you were just naive and you were just doing your thing, or did you loin your or gird your loins and and just tough through it? What would that look like?
I mean, look, it's amazing because I remember at one point looking at one of my partners and saying, I think we should give all the money back to our investors. Like we're done. Like there's nothing, it's out of our control. In some ways we felt unlucky, but you can't really say that in the middle of such a terrible tragedy. But yeah, no, I thought we were through at that point. We hadn't built up such an expensive expense base. I think we were fortunate that we were actually quite early and that we hadn't made some big investments that we then had to pull back. So the fact that we were so young, the fact that we were just in that early kind of seed stage of growth was probably a blessing in disguise for us. But we just put our head down and said, okay, we got to keep powering through. And I think you shift to what you can control. And that was, hey, let's keep building the product. Let's keep building the solution. We obviously can't go to New York in this case and sell. But what we can do is build during this period of uncertainty.
And so part of that, do you think you said you weren't well funded or as certainly as well funded as the other, and you bootstrapped, you were frugal. Overall advice, if you were to give someone advice, would it be don't go raise a bunch of money? That's a good forcing function to figure things out. Like what's your take on raising capital?
It's probably business dependent. So I don't want to paint a broad stroke here. My personal tendency would be to try to bootstrap as long as you can. And it's less about losing control. Honestly, I think people, when they have this conversation, they're concerned about someone else having a vote at the table and them directing the business in the way they would. And certainly that's a possibility. But I mean, we ended up raising private equity money 8 or 9 years into the business, and we had a terrific relationship with our general partner. So I can't say enough good things about that relationship. But things do change. And honestly, if you can't, unless you're in a super capital intensive business, if you're in software business, which is what we were in, software is not that capital intensive, you should be able to at least get your pilot out, particularly in today's world with AI, but get your pilot and test it with a few customers without having to go raise a bunch of money. Because really what you're trying to do in those earliest phases is learn, right?
Right.
Does it actually resonate? Does it solve a problem? Does it work? Do they like it?
Right. Yeah. Figure that out, then go pour gas on it. Right.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm biased. I started with a laptop, and back then it was Dreamweaver and Fireworks were the software packages, and that still cost like $10,000. It was, it wasn't cheap, but yeah, I see it's sort of like, you meet the trust fund baby or the trust fund kid, and like money doesn't automatically solve problems. You gotta solve them. You gotta solve them before you get the money. That would be a little bit more helpful.
I would argue that money creates problems. This isn't just an entrepreneurial statement. That's a life statement as well. Money, for all the blessings that wealth is or money is or funding is, it creates a different set of issues and problems that you have to contend with. So again, we had a competitor that started around the same time. They raised $60 million. We raised less than $1 million. So we're talking about a chasm between how we operated the business. And when you have $60 million, you need to go spend it, right? You're supposed to grow, right? You're supposed to hire. And because we didn't have it, we didn't get over our skis. So again, I think money at the right time when you know what to do with it. When you don't know what to do with it, oh buddy, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And so you grew this company pretty big, right? It ended up being over 500 employees.
Yeah, right? We had offices all over the world, 500 team members, 100 million in revenue, beautiful kind of software as a service business. And we were first time entrepreneurs. So like every day was new, right?
Yeah.
From opening a new office to holding, big team meetings to, even going to accrual-based accounting instead of cash accounting. I mean, there's a million different things that we had to learn along.
So this is a little bit in my time frame. It seems like this is a little bit the beginning of this idea of purpose-driven companies was starting to happen. Was there any play on that, or was this purely just sort of capitalistic, which by the way is purpose-driven in and of itself? But was this more just of a, hey, we see a need and we're gonna go fill it?
It started as a need and we're gonna go fill it. But I will tell you, we really, and this is not just me, this is my partners as well, we really focused on building a company that people wanted to work at and really enjoyed. And we had a bunch of awards that signified that we'd done a pretty good job there. So we actually spent quite a bit of time thinking about culture. And I even remember we had done 7 or 8 acquisitions along the way, and our team had grown pretty dramatically. So you go from having a holiday party, a Christmas party of 10 people to 1,000 with spouses and the like. And I remember at one point us saying, "Wow, this is going to cost us, I don't know, $250,000 to throw a party and have everyone fly in town." And I remember us distinctly saying, "It's worth it," because the moment our culture starts to fracture, right, the company will start to go off course. So we probably overinvested in culture, both in terms of like mind share that we dedicated to it, but also in terms of our expense line and making sure that people actually loved working at the company. And I think a good example of that is, the company was sold 8 years ago now, and there are still people that work there that used to work with me, and they love it. And I mean, that's the greatest evidence that we created a pretty good place to work.
Yeah. And if someone's listening or thinking about starting a company, why would they want to create? I mean, it sounds like an easy answer, but I bet you have a different perspective on it. Like, why do you want to create a great place to work?
Because compensation only goes so far. Purpose and making a difference is why people actually get excited to come to work, right? And to do something, especially if, it's one thing to be a founder, right? Where you have an emotional investment in the business, you have an equity investment in the business. If you are just someone who gets paid to do the job, then you need to have meaning, because you can get paid in a lot of different places to do a job. And to jump and get a raise here and there, that's pretty easy in today's world. So, or easier in today's world than it used to be when when my parents were growing up. So we really wanted to make sure that people felt like this was a place that was making a difference, even though it's not enough for profit, right? Like we're not feeding kids in Africa. Like we were helping our customers be better, but there's meaning in that as well. So that's why it mattered, right? And again, we feel like, and you know this, like people is the hardest part of any business. It's harder than product. It's harder than growth. It's harder than all those things. So why not be really focused on having great people and treating them well?
Yeah. And when you said you over invested, I got the impression that you would do it again. But did you over invest it because the multiple in EBITDA, or the PE firm was going, hey guys, like we probably did culture a little bit too well, like we could have made more. What's behind that?
Well, let me give you two examples. One would be financially. So yeah, the definition of overinvested. One, when we brought on private equity, they said, hey, let's create an incentive plan for your executive team. And we said, no, we actually want to create an incentive plan for everyone. We want every employee to be an owner. And that's not common in that scenario. So, but we were steadfast. And because of that, when we did have an exit for the business, there were hundreds of people that had life-changing experience.
What like an
that
ESOP?
would be, no, it was a stock option plan. Yeah. But yeah, so when we had an exit, there were many people that their kids' college educations were paid for, or mortgages, those types of things. So that was rewarding. So that's on the financial side. On the time investment side, and really that's probably more of where my statement resonates. We just spent a lot of time thinking about it and actually doing things to demonstrate it. So a real simple example, I think it was on our 10th anniversary, we washed, the executive team, 8 of us, washed every employee's car.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with feet. And I was going to be like, wow.
That would have been even better. Like something like 90 cars over the course of 8 hours. I mean, I was worn out, and a few of these cars were really dirty, but it was an outward display of like, hey, we are here to serve, not just lead and be the boss. And I think things like that matter. Right? We could have hired someone. We could have hired a company to come in and wash 90 cars, but that didn't have the same impact. And we not only washed their car, we wrote every one of them a handwritten note of why they were important to the business. So you got to imagine like the amount of time that went in to write 90 handwritten notes from 8 of us, plus, washing cars. So that was kind of an example of like where we overinvested with our time.
Yeah. I would imagine some of the people had a hard time you guys washing their car. Like they're like, didn't want it to happen. Like, no, you're not going to do that.
We had a couple that were very embarrassed. That's for sure.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. And so, if the listeners, again, just to get an idea, this was a major exit, like, near $1 billion, if I'm correct. I mean, this was I would call it a grand slam. And, how excited were you and the team to finally exit?
Very excited, but also tired. So, we started this in 2000. We brought on a private equity partner in 2008. I lived overseas for a couple of years with 4 kids under the age of 5. I've traveled,
wow,
2+ million miles on Delta alone. We had offices all over the world, so I'm traveling in between those, and we're growing and growing and growing. But there did reach a point in 2015, 2016, where we just said, look, we have been getting after it for a long time. And in order for this company to grow even further, you're going to need someone that's ready to take it to the next level. And we're just not sure that we have not the energy, but the desire to kind of take it to the next level.
Yeah.
You sacrifice a lot of things. We haven't talked about that at all. You sacrifice a lot of things when you're building a company. And at the same time, I'm also kind of a driven guy. So I had decided to like incorporate long distance Ironman training into my life as well. So I had all these things that were taking time. And you know what they take time from? Is family and friends.
Right.
So I was reaching a point of not burnout, but just a recognition that, Heath, like, how much is enough? At what expense is that? And is this really what you want to do for the next, 10 years?
Right. Yeah.
So that tension started building. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think it's a great awareness. You might have come to it in definitely a different scale. than I did, and most people do. But there is a time you got to pay attention, and like you said, you feel the tension. It may not feel like burnout to me. I didn't realize it was burnout until 2 years later. I was like,
Mm.
oh, that was burnout. Like I was, I was done. But yeah, to have the young family, Ironman training, 2 million miles. I mean, you were wide open.
I was wide open, and I wasn't a good communicator. So, my schedule was most important. There would often be times where I would be heading to the airport. And my wife didn't even know I was leaving. Right. Well, wait a minute. I didn't know you were traveling. Where are you traveling to? Right. She had no idea whether it was Chicago or South Africa. So, man, I regret not involving her more in the business that way. But it became a very, I think it's easy, particularly for entrepreneurs and founders, to get their identity wrapped up in their thing. And I went through a period where I was even though we were, we cared about our people. We also were very proud of what we had built, right? Not in an arrogant way, but again, it became part of our identity. And I think that just kind of put me off course for a few years on where my priorities were. And they were on me, right? So a lot of reflection after the fact, kind of like you're 2 years after the fact realizing you were burnt out. I think a few years after the fact, I realized, no, I was in some ways, a very selfish person for probably a half decade or decade within the business, because it demanded so much from me. And I felt so much responsibility to carry the weight of those demands.
Well, the responsibility, the obligation, I would imagine you were winning, and you guys were probably winning daily. There's some power with that, and some ego and hubris and all that stuff is, it all like, I would imagine it can slowly accumulate. Did you feel like that? Did you wake up and be like, who am I?
Pretty close, yeah. I remember it. So we sold the company in 2017. I ended up working for the acquiring business for a few months, but I remember in 2018 saying a prayer one night, saying, God, I need a mentor. Like, I need someone who's ahead of me, because I've always been the mentor to someone, to others, but I've never really had anyone. My dad and I have a great relationship, but no one on the outside that was telling me, hey, Heath, here's what's around the corner, right? Like, if you keep doing this stuff, like, it's not going to work out well. So I said that prayer. The next day I get a call from a guy who was ahead of me in life. And he said, hey, I want you to be part of my mentoring. And I'm not making this up. Literally the next day I get a call from a guy saying, hey, I want you to be part of this group that I'm pulling together to mentor your young guy. It was one of those just Holy Spirit, God wink, like, I hear you. Like, we're going to take care of this. Unbeknownst to me, and this is a cool part of the story, and might even get emotional telling it, but my wife had been praying for that moment for a couple of years, literally praying like, God, he's a good man, bring someone into his life to make sure he's not going to do something stupid, and the stupid was more of like, just forgetting why he's here on earth and who's important. So that man was an answered prayer, and that experience, I'm happy to talk through that experience over the course of the next year, is kind of what changed my life in terms of where my priorities are today, even.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's so interesting, the hero's journey, and part of the hero's journey is a guide shows up, and
yeah,
it's amazing how it plays out in real life. That is cool. Maybe you can comment on this too. I just sort of have a comment of like, a lot of times, especially successful entrepreneurs, the level of success that you guys were having and you had personally, people think like you got the Midas touch, or you got it all figured out. And if people really knew what happened, so we'll stress test this and see what you think. If people really knew what was going on, they would know that you're making it up as you go along. You don't know what the hell you're doing. You're using common sense, and you're smart, and yeah, you're figuring some stuff out, but like, you can't even believe, you're pinching yourself. You can't even believe it's turning out as good as it's turning out. And like, if anyone really, the imposter syndrome is alive and well.
Yeah.
And then you have this exit, and you're getting significantly rewarded, and you can almost even feel like, I don't even deserve this. So how do you react? Do you resonate with that? Or
I agree with every part of that, every ounce of what you just said. It's funny. You get on the backside of these things, and people just assume you're smart, whatever that means. But the truth is, in some ways, like, I forget what podcast you used to listen to, but they'd ask how much of it was your hard work and how much of it was luck.
Mhm.
There's a lot of luck involved. I mean, we started a company with internet-based software and data collection right at the outset of the internet becoming a thing that worked that way. And that's hard for,
Yeah.
like if you're younger, that doesn't make any sense to you. But I mean, the internet back in 1999 was a pretty new medium. Yeah. And so we built kind of the first software in our industry this way. And we just kind of caught a wave of, momentum that was solely a function of us being in the right place at the right time. Now, not that we didn't make good decisions, use common sense and all that good stuff, but the truth is there's a lot of luck involved. So yeah, there are so many pinch me moments along the way. And then you get to the end of it, you're like, man, did I really deserve that? Right? Is it, and how do I steward what's been given to me? And you have to resist. I'm not on any boards. So, when you have something like this, you get opportunities to sit on boards. And I used to tell people that would ask me, I'd say, look, people that sit on boards have some expertise. I don't have any expertise. I just have ideas and a vision. And I'll probably drive people crazy at businesses with ideas and vision because they've got their own ideas and vision, right? So I'm not going to be a good board member. And I mentioned that because like people will say, hey, how do you start a business? How do you do this? I'm like, I can give you some advice, but the truth is like, I'm not a sage on that front, right? I just happen to meet some guys, happen to start a business, happen to have some success. Like there's a lot of happen in there versus like intent to do something.
Yeah. Well, so, all right. So let's unpack this guide. So, you pray for a guide. He shows up the next day. What would this process look like? Or
yeah, well, this guy was a friend. He started a men's ministry called Radical Mentoring, and he had been doing it for a decade or more. And it's interesting. I always supported his ministry financially because I believed in so much in what he was doing. Even brought him to my company to speak one year for our holiday gathering. But I never went through his program because I was always too busy, right? Like the typical entrepreneur story. Love what you're doing, too busy. And he called me and said, join the group. He said, everyone's about your age. They're all high capacity leaders. He said, I want you to spend the next 9 months, with me going through that. And I just immediately said yes. Like I knew it was where I was supposed to be. It was intense. Like it's one of these things where you're signing a commitment letter, your wife's signing a commitment letter. Like you're going to make the meeting or else you get kicked out. Like you're going to read the material. You're going to do the thing. Like it wasn't. And it's also one of these things where you kind of get broken down before you get built back up. Like it's full transparency, full vulnerability. Like if you've got any hidden things, they got to come out to the light. But man, it was freeing. And just being in a community of other guys who, from the outside look like they've all got it together, but like you said earlier, that are all struggling with something, right? Imposter syndrome or addiction or whatever. There's just something about the bond that's built through that experience with the group of guys. And then having a guide and a leader that says, okay, great. Now, what are you living for? Who are you living for? How are you going to live? What is your purpose? What's your calling? Like making you really think about the things that matter through that experience just completely transformed who I wanted to be and how I wanted to be.
how would you sum up the transformation from what to what?
Less about me, honestly. It was this like breaking down of like, no, Heath, you're not that important. You really aren't. Yes, you were a boss for some period of time. So were a lot of people, right? Yeah, I think that was mostly it. And what led the follow on to that was me having recognition that the first half of life was about me, and the second half of life needs to be about my wife.
Yeah, yeah, and because she was a tremendous support. Like you, again, I'm putting a lot of words in your mouth, Heath, and you're being kind and agreeing to. Well, without her, you probably didn't do this, right?
Oh, no. Look, I'll give you a ridiculous story. So we moved to England, and I just waited to the last minute. We moved into a place. We didn't even have furniture. I've got, again, 4 kids under the age of 5, and all we have are mattresses on the floor in this flat. This is on a Saturday. And guess where I am on Monday? I'm on a plane traveling to go meet with customers. She didn't even know.
Good luck.
She didn't even know how. Yeah, she didn't even know how to have a key to the, who knows? Like, and I'm looking back, I'm like, what an idiot, right? Like, so yes, she was picking up the pieces and keeping everything organized and keeping the family together and, just making sure that we were a unit while I was out doing my thing.
Yeah, that's so funny. I just find it's interesting and it's not. I mean, your story is unique to you, but I think you nailed it when you said, just rewinding a little bit, just you were the boss. Like you were needed, you were important, people deferred to you, and then you sell, and then the next day,
Yeah.
none of that. None of that. It's gone. Like
Yeah.
you're just Joe Schmo now. It is so it's almost like I just want entrepreneurs to be aware. Like if you are fortunate where you can sell, like congratulations, that's awesome. But know that that feeling is probably coming, and you sort of can't prepare for it. You just.
Hey, I'll tell you a really funny story, short story. So just to show you how much I was humbled after we sold. So, you're the boss, you have this incredible exit. We were acquired by a public company, NASDAQ. And I get a NASDAQ tag to get into the office, right? An employee tag. They misspell my name. It's spelled Heath Wilson. I can't even get past the front desk in New York. I mean, I felt like such a peon, right? I went from like top of the mountain to, underground overnight. And it was a struggle. It's like, wow, I am no longer important on any level whatsoever. They don't even know my name.
Yeah. I can see my story is like God is like, make sure they get the name wrong on the badge.
Exactly.
We got to start working on this guy.
That's so good. So
That is
good.
funny. All right. So, well, really quick, like transition time. So 2017, you sell it. How long did you take before you started doing something else?
Yeah, I worked until the end of 2018 for the acquiring company. And I say worked in quotes because I mean I was at work, but I wasn't doing a lot of work. It was just one of those things where I didn't have any reports. I don't even know why they kept me. I think it was more of a cultural thing than anything.
Same.
I wasn't working towards a payout necessarily, so I just kind of floated along. It was weird. I mean, I remember sitting at my desk, just opening my computer, thinking, I have nothing to do, literally nothing to do. So what am I going to do? Anyway, we're to the end of 2018. And then this is so interesting. I hate to even use the word, but I retired. And so January 1st, I, get my Bible and journal and go to a coffee shop and spend an hour there, then go do a workout and something else. And then by 10 a.m., I'm done. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do the rest of the day? And that happened for 45 days straight until my wife sat me down and said, Heath, this is not going to work. She said, you are driving me crazy. Like, you've got to find something to do. Right. And it's also weird. I was 43, 42, 43. It's like, so my friends are still working. So it's like I can call the guys and say, let's go play golf or pickleball or whatever, without feeling extremely guilty about it. So honestly, I started to have this overwhelming feeling of, I don't know, maybe the right way to say it is I felt like I was consuming, but not producing, taking, but not giving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that led me to send a text to my buddy and say, let's go out to lunch and let's do something. So I lasted only 45 days before I figured out that I'm just not meant to sit idle.
All right. So is this something what you're doing now, or?
Yeah. So, I mean, I part of my story is, when we've touched on this, when you feel like you're important and when your identity's wrapped up in something, you tend to spend a lot of time on that thing. And around this, 2015, 2016, I started feeling a lot of tension with regards to devices. I had the BlackBerry when they came out in 06 and all the iPhones, and I, being connected and feeling important, I was just always on it. So it was like, I
never thought they were going to get a BlackBerry out of my hand. Even when the iPhone came out, I was like, no way. It doesn't have a keyboard. Not going to happen.
I know that was an investment miss on my part. I should have invested in Apple right at that. I remember sitting on a plane and looking around and seeing guys with the BlackBerry and an iPhone, and I was like, man, it's not going to take hold. And here we are today. So, but I felt the tension. My kids were late elementary, middle school, and I thought, oh wow, if they do what Dad did or does with his phone, this will be a colossal failure for them and for me as a parent. And I looked around and I saw everyone else was struggling with this as well. Like, our generation and our kids in particular were the guinea pigs with this new technology. And, now we're starting to understand the ramifications of it. But I thought, hey, I've got to find a way to try to solve this for my family. Because the last thing I want is for all four of my kids to be sitting on their devices while we're having family dinners. And I could just see around the corner that this was not going to end well, particularly because I had modeled it so poorly. So that led to a text, which led to a meeting with a buddy of mine, said, hey, let's just go try to solve this, right? Let's try to build something. Let's try to find a market. Let's, if nothing else, we'll solve it for our family. And honestly, I said that. I said, I'll spend a bunch of money to try to solve it for my family. And hopefully we solve it for mine. We'll solve it for others. And that was 2018. We started in earnest like 2019 and started building. Then COVID hit. And it's funny because, initially the idea was, and there's been a few iterations. And for those entrepreneurs out there, like this is how it works, right? You start with something and it goes 7 different ways. But initially our thought was, hey, we're going to build something for companies. We're going to build something for churches to make them more productive, to create distraction-free workplaces. Just at that time, I was really frustrated with how much people use their phone at the office, candidly. Not just, the family impacts, but the lack of productivity and focus. So that's where the idea started. And then when COVID hit, we were like, well, goodness, no one's going to church and no one goes to the office. So we better find someone else to sell to. So at that point, we switched to e-commerce and really started selling directly to families where they felt this tension in the home. And we're trying to find a solution to try to tackle this, both primarily for their kids, but also I think as role models and as parents.
For themselves too, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you probably know the stat better than I do, but is it the average Gen Z or millennial picks up their phone 36 times, or maybe just adult picks up their phone 36 times an hour or something like that at work?
It's probably 2 or 3x that at this point. I mean, the beautiful things about phones is that they allow us to do so many things that,
right.
I mean, even right now in this podcast, if I don't have my phone, but if I did, I could open the garage door for someone to do some work, right? It just creates convenience that we never had, right? And sometimes that could be bad, right? I can order stuff from Amazon right now that I don't need, but I can make it happen immediately. The problem with our phones is that they're with us all the time. That's really the number one issue, is the proximity. And if you're like me, if I've got my phone, I'm going to use it, right? Whether it's the weather or checking the score, Clemson score, UT score, like I'm going to use the phone. And unfortunately, most of us aren't. It's not even our issue. Like I was going to say, most of us don't have enough willpower not to do the things we don't want to do. But, these things suck us in. And particularly if your brain's not fully developed, which, teenagers and young kids aren't, then it's a recipe for compulsion and, in some ways even addiction. So yeah, that's what we are working to solve right now.
Yeah. And if you're an employee or even a kid, and you're not completely engaged in your work, which Gallup would tell us that, like what, over 65% aren't, what are you going to do? You're going to go to your phone.
Yeah.
You're going to go to the thing that gives you some level of satisfaction. All right. So, I mean, you're a healthy, 6 years into this thing now. How are you feeling about it? Like, is it gone in the direction that you wanted to go in, or where are you?
Well, it's gone in many different directions. So initially, again, it started with one idea that pivoted because of COVID. We were also building a hardware product in the middle of the global supply chain crisis, if you want to call it that. So what we thought was going to cost X was X. So that was painful. Anyone will tell you that started a hardware business, that hardware is hard. So we actually pivoted away from hardware to software. We have since switched markets. Actually, it's fun. We actually have circled all the way back to where we started. So now we're going back to organizations and churches. So we even changed the company name. So there's been, how many iterations? 4, 5, 6 iterations in the past 4 or 5 years. Where we are today, I absolutely love. And I'll tell you why. I mean, we get to support a team, whether that's a church staff or an organizational team. And we're basically giving them, for lack of a better way to describe it, a wellness solution or a care solution for their team. Meaning, hey, we're going to help you create rhythms that are going to make you better at work, at home, and in your relationship with your Heavenly Father, if that's applicable, because we're going to create those habits and break the dependence you have on this device, and it works. So we have our first sandbox we're playing in now, our churches, our earliest customers. And I got to tell you, I love meeting with faith leaders. I mean, it's so uplifting, and the impact is incredible. I mean, so our product basically helps you spend less time on your phone, just to make it very simple.
How's it do that?
Yeah,
Does it zap you if you're on too long, or?
we need to that should be a feature enhancement. I like that idea. No, well, look, we're leaning into what your intentions are. All of us have good intentions, right? But without a plan, we don't actually most of us don't tend to do the things we want to do. So we've created a very simple, app that rewards you, gamifies, encourages you, pats you on the back for spending time away from your phone, and it tracks your time off. So I like to tell people all the time, like, I don't care about your screen time. My screen time, I'm a 12th degree black belt with our product. My screen time has never changed. But what has changed is when I'm off my screen, I'm present. When I'm off my screen, I'm focused. When I'm off my screen, I'm locked in relationally. And that's all that matters, honestly. Like what
And
you choose to do on your
how does your product do that? How's it let you lock in
yeah.
person in real life?
Yeah, so the real key to it is getting the device out of your hand. So
Okay.
very simply, from a practical standpoint, you push a button, you flip your phone over, it buzzes twice to effectively say, hey, good job, Heath, you've decided to do something intentional. And if I choose to flip my phone back over and unlock the screen, it's going to kill that session. So it creates a little bit of friction to say, like, hold on a second, you said you were going to do this thing, you need to keep doing this thing. So you start to, if you're competitive, it fuels those competitive juices. Not guilt's not the right word, but if you intend to do that thing, you want to get score, you want to get credit for doing it. And there's really something kind of beautiful psychological about that little bit of friction that leads to behavioral change. And more importantly, you start to build a muscle that says, back to our conversation, hey, I'm not that important, right? I don't always need to be reached on this thing. And you build a muscle that says, this thing's also not that important. Because how many of us say, well, I can't not have my phone because what if so-and-so calls? Like, that call has never happened for most of us, right? It probably never will happen. So and our customers just start to build this digital muscle that says, I need this thing. I'm going to use this thing. I'm not going back to a flip phone. Completely agree. But at the same time, like, I've got to build some boundaries and rhythms that allow me to, again, focus on what I say matters most in my life.
Right. Cool. And so it's sort of like all or nothing. You flip that thing over, there's no apps. You're not accessing anything.
We don't actually, it's funny. That's a great question. We don't block anything.
Hmm.
We have learned that the more heavy-handed you are, the less likely someone is to use it. Mm-hmm. So to use that example, so if you are a mom, let's say, and you have kids in school, like the typical response would be like, well, what if the school nurse calls? Okay, if she calls, great, your phone's still going to ring. We built in a widget, so when you flip over your phone, you would actually, almost like a Starbucks or Uber widget, if you know those, so it'd be a little widget for our product. And that way, if something happens and you need to respond to something, you can flip it over and not break your session and flip it right back over. So we're really leaning into, this is not about restriction. This is about intention. And so much of the conversation around phones in particular has been demonizing these devices as these evil things in our pocket. I just don't believe that. I actually think it's a hopeful opportunity for us to lead as parents, as church leaders, as organizational leaders, to say, like, no. Hey, I was in Atlanta last week. I didn't take a horse and carriage. I drove a car, right? Like, technology changes. So phones are here, and something beyond phones will be here soon, or soon enough. But we've got to learn how to use these as tools and not distraction devices. And unfortunately, most of us have just succumbed to the distraction component.
Well, I think that's brilliant. Aligning it to intention and not use, almost everything is like punishment, or not punishment, but like locking it down, restricting you, which anybody, employees, kids, they're going to fight against that, right? But it's like, hey, what's your intention? Is your intention to check it 36 times in an hour? Well, no. Okay. It sounds like your software will help them do that. If
shame and guilt never works in the long run. It'll work in the short term, right? Yeah. And that's, there's a long history of porn addicts that tell you shame and guilt doesn't work. But if you start doing, it's no different than going to the gym and starting to see the impact of working out. When you start to feel, I'll tell you this, if you are a husband and you come home from work and you put your phone down and you start talking to your wife, things will change. I can assure you, things will change. Like, your conversation will be deeper, intimacy will be better. Like, everything changes when you are connected, because you're connected relationally, right? We're all so busy, like, in between moments and missing moments, because we're trying to do two things at once. And it's just impossible to actually connect with someone, to be present when you've got that thing in your hand.
Yeah. Well, I'm half joking, but Shelly, there's hope. There's hope. All right. So Shelly's my wife. So Can individuals get this, or you sell? Is it just through organizations?
Only through organizations, yeah. But we also determined through the last 4 years that it works better in a group. It's not unlike, my mentoring group. Like when you have a group coming together, all focus in the same direction, they do better. It's really hard to do things individually, particularly behavioral change. It's why I went to play pickleball last night with a big group versus, going on to a wall and hitting the ball against the wall. So we're really leaning into those group dynamics. And so what's interesting about our product is when you decide to be intentional, when you're done, it's going to ask you, hey, what'd you do? So you get to categorize it, or we say tag, the top 3 tags across every organization that's used it. And these, it doesn't matter if you sell it to a church or company. Number 1 will be work. So they're more productive. They're more focused. They're doing deep work. They're actually getting done the thing they're getting paid to do, right? Number 2 is family time. That means when they're going home horizontally, they're more connected than ever, right? And this is probably filtering to the family as well, right? So now husband or wife or kids are seeing a different level of presence than they're accustomed to. And then number 3 is reflection, quiet time, Bible study. So now vertically, that relationship is now more distraction free. Man, if it's only those 3 things from here until the end of this business, what a huge win.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I don't think you mentioned the so if someone is part of an organization and would love to see their organization get this, how do they find out more?
Yeah, it's called Reclaim Well. So the whole idea is that we're going to help you reclaim your time. We're going to help you do it well. It is reclaimwell.com. You can take a look there. We have, again, initial market has been churches and nonprofit organizations. So we have some companies as well. But it's all about values. It's really more of a cultural investment than anything, which is kind of ironic considering how much I talked about culture in my first business. You are saying as a leader, like, hey, this is important to us. This isn't about taking something from you. This is because we want something for you, right? And what says you care more about your people than, hey, we want to give you back your time. We want to help you create deeper relationships. We want to make you more productive at the office. So we actually, it's funny, we stay away from the word screen time. We stay away from the word restrictions because there's no part of this platform that's built around those facets. We're all built around helping you do the things that you want to do.
Right. Yep. I think that's incredible. All right. So to wrap up, I have a question for you, and we're going to go a little bit with context with what we talked about. So for somewhat seasoned entrepreneur who's in the thick of things, maybe similar thing, family obligations, responsibilities are growing. What would your advice been, to yourself and to this entrepreneur? What would you advise them as they're in the thick of things?
I really think you need a couple people around you that are going to speak truth and reel you back in. It's very easy, and you hear this a lot. You're very lonely at the top. And some of that is self-created in a way. Like I found that I was isolating myself because, I'm so busy, right? Like I was terrible at returning phone calls from friends and family because I was so busy. Eventually they stop calling. You know why? Because I think you're so busy. So you'll find yourself on an island if you don't have some people to speak truth with you. And that, that mentoring group was truth for me after the fact. So I wish I would have had a couple guys or more around me that said, hey, you're too big for your britches, get back, focus on what matters. Yeah, it's cool your company's growing. That's great. Big deal. There's a lot of guys with companies growing, right? Just someone to kind of bring me back down to earth. So whether that's a small group at your church, whether that's a men's group, whether that's just a couple buddies you went to college with, whatever that looks like, please, please, please have some people around you that speak truth.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And yeah, I just read a stat recently that the average of friends a man has is between 0 and 2, and it just points to the fact is we as a whole just do not have much support, and we're all out doing it on ourselves. But people would look at you and say, oh well, he's got all sorts of people, and the reality is you don't. Everyone's just doing their own thing. And to your point too, is you just mentioned that 1 year. Probably me feeling this is I had a New Year's resolution that I was not gonna say the word busy. When someone asks like, hey, how are things going? Oh, I'm busy. I just found myself saying busy, and I'm like, I never want to say that again.
Yeah.
Like we
it's tough though, isn't it? It's
It is.
tough
Well,
because you hear it, right?
we conflate busy with success, and that's such a lie. If you think about
Yeah.
it, like, no, success is you're not busy.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so true. Your comment about men and friends 0 to 2. A little off topic, but I would say the longing of my heart for the past few years has been community, because I gave it up so much in the past, and I've read a bunch of books, and I've sought it out, and I've made a few posts on LinkedIn over the last few months about community, and you would not believe the number of men that reach out to me and want to talk about it. I could post like top 10, ways to build a foolproof business. I'd get no comments. But I post a little bit about community and relationships, and these guys are hunting me down because they want to talk about it. Because, to your point, everyone is feeling it, right? And for whatever reason, men are just not as good as women at maintaining and building community. And man, we got to fix that. We
Yeah,
have got to fix that.
I agree. The stat for women was 4 to 6. So, they're 2 to 3xing what men do in terms of friends. And these are close friends. I think the next category was acquaintances, and men have maybe a 6 to 8 acquaintances, and the women have like 10 to 12. So you're right. But women do it better. Just like a lot of things, women do it better than men.
Yeah. That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, Heath, it was a pleasure to hear your story, and thank you for taking the time to share it. And I know, I my hope is that there's at least one man out there who takes a nugget away from your story, and it makes a difference in his life or her life, for
Absolutely.
our female entrepreneurs listen as well. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Adam, loved it, brother. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, likewise. Until next time, this is Adam with Made to Matter, and thanks for joining us. Take care.